Hi, I'm Jordan Mossman, science writer, and creator of the YouTube channel known as Earth Under Emergency. Let's talk about chemical pollution of the ocean. Let's discuss a pie chart that was available from sites.google.com. For a moment, I need to point out that in episode 2, we discussed some of the major damage that oil spills have done and could potentially do in detail. Yet, on this chart, it is shown to be less than 10% of the pollutants that enter the ocean. That doesn't mean we were wrong about the damage caused by oil spills. Now we have to take a look at other categories of substances that pollute the oceans. Plastic is a significant and dangerous pollutant in the ocean, but we will devote a separate episode to discussing the role of plastic as a pollutant. Right now, let's focus on the other categories of chemical pollutants, so that they don't escape our purview. The largest slice of the pie is attributed to sewage. From this comes sodium hypochlorite, petroleum distillates, phenol, cresol, ammonia, and formaldehyde. Untreated sewage brings with it several types of microorganisms which can be pathogenic and can thrive in the media of the chemical environment that is present in the sewage. These can be bacteria such as Salmonella, Escherichia coli, Campylobacter, and Shigella, which causes dysentery. These can also be viruses such as hepatitis. Encephalitis can result from bacteria or viruses. There may also be protozoans such as Cryptosporidia or helminths, which are parasitic worms. Leakage from septic tanks or waste disposal sites introduce bacteria into the water. Pesticides and fertilizers seep into farm soil. It has been observed that more than 2.8 billion gallons of industrial wastewater per day are discharged into the oceans. The U.S. Geological Survey in 1999 and 2000 found medications in 80% of water samples. These have been observed to have damaging effects on aquatic life. Industrial wastewater gets into the ocean in the following 3 ways. 1. From land into coastal waters. 2. From pipeline discharges. 3. From transportation accidents. Aluminum toxicity appears to be increased when water is more acidic. This is extremely harmful to some types of fish, particularly striped bass and trout. Sediments release phosphorus into lakes, which causes algae to grow too fast, and this impacts water quality and results in a process known as eutrophication. This is harmful to water quality, food resources, and habitats. Excessive concentrations of elements commonly come from runoff. Nitrogen has a similar effect. This causes a fast growth of algae that consumes so much oxygen that plants and animals end up dying from a lack of oxygen. Let me rephrase this into steps, so I can illustrate what eutrophication means in terms of a chain reaction in an ecosystem. There is an overgrowth of algae and plants. The excess of these algae and plants then decompose. This produces a tremendous amount of CO2. This lowers the pH of seawater. Ocean acidification is a growing problem, and this may not be the only cause of it. In fact, with so many chemical species entering bodies of water that lead to the ocean, and some which enter the ocean directly, ocean acidification could arise from many sources. In an excellent article on eutrophication by Nathan Daniel, written for Prezi, eutrophication has the following steps. 1. Excess nutrients enter roots to bodies of water. 2. The nutrients enhance plant growth. 3. Algal blooms occur. 4. Algae die and are decomposed by bacteria. 5. The decomposition of algae increases biological oxygen demand. 6. Fish and other aquatic life forms die. Bacillus and Pseudomonas seem to produce the enzymes that effectively decompose algal blooms. These include amylases, which break down starches, proteases, which break down proteins, and lipases, which break down fats. On September 27 of 1962, the book Silent Spring by Rachel Carson was published. This book documented the chemical industry's abuses of pesticides. Rachel Carson was both a marine biologist and a fabulous science writer who focused on environmental issues. Not enough can be said about how important she is, as well as her message for keeping this planet healthy. Another leader in the environmental movement was Senator Gaylord Nelson. His legacy, as well as Rachel Carson's, extends beyond the scope of this Earth Under Emergency episode, but with respect to what Senator Nelson did to protect the ocean, was his sponsoring of the Clean Water Restoration Act in 1966, which led to the Clean Water Act of 1972. In the video, Water Pollution by Different Industries, Organic and Inorganic Pollutants, a gentleman by the name of Harshad Dwivedi made a wonderful attempt to organize the types of chemical pollutants that are produced by different industries. I will from here on in try to follow his way of listing them. First, a few isolated nuggets before I jump in. Sunscreen damages and kills corals by bleaching them. Acrylamide polymer is a soluble fertilizer that causes cancer. The FDA claims that acrylamide forms only in food that is heated, and it is not present in the environment. Yet, it is also produced by industrial product manufacturers, some of whom manufacture paper and dyes. The mining industry puts out many inorganic pollutants. High chloride concentrations can affect aquatic life. In freshwater, it can inhibit the osmotic processes by which salts and other solutes are normally distributed in their bodily fluids. This can damage organs, inhibit growth, reproduction, or simply kill sea organisms. Chloride levels are now being found that are greater than federal standards of acceptability for human consumption in many streams. High levels of hydrogen sulfide can kill fish. The process by which ferric and aluminum hydroxides are produced consumes oxygen, leaving it unavailable for aquatic organisms. The iron and steel industry puts out both inorganic and organic pollutants. Thiocyanate is the first on our list of inorganic pollutants put out by this industry. Although it is less toxic than cyanide, it is still quite toxic, especially in increased concentrations. Fish that are more active are more strongly affected by it. Cyanide is extremely toxic to birds and mammals. It can form complexes with metals that are just as toxic to aquatic life. It blocks the absorption of oxygen into the cells of fish or marine invertebrates. This comes not only from the iron and steel industry, but also from a method of mining gold. Copper is considered highly toxic to aquatic organisms. Chronic exposure to copper will kill fish. Copper sulfate inhibits ammonia and nitrite oxidation. It is a pesticide used to control the growth of algae, yet there are still places in the ocean that suffer the effects of algal blooms. Most of the heavy metals that are found in wastewater are arsenic, cadmium, chromium, copper, lead, nickel, and zinc. Of these, cadmium and chromium are released from the iron and steel industry. Along with the other metals mentioned, they are released from mining, industrial waste, sewage, runoff, and use of pesticides, especially in agriculture. Phenols, which I mentioned in a previous Earth Under Emergency episode, are very toxic to humans and animals, even in low amounts. They are cancer-causing and damage the liver and blood cells. It has been found that when microorganisms encounter these compounds, they can be transformed into other compounds that are just as toxic. Naphtha compounds. I spoke about naphthalene being one of the toxic compounds polluting bodies of water during the Earth Under Emergency episode about fossil fuels. It is produced in the process known as hydraulic fracturing. Chemical plants produce and release some chemicals similar to what I've mentioned, but also release a host of organic compounds and nitrogen-based dyes. A research duo, Celia Chen and Pianpian Wu, found that as more organic matter dissolves in bodies of water, a process that is driven by climate change, there is an increase of the transfer of methylmercury from water into phytoplankton. Methylmercury is now being found in the organs of fish. It is dangerous to humans and animals, particularly because it's a very strong neurotoxin. By the way, in case this wasn't mentioned in the episode about drought and wildfires, it is now believed that drought causes an increase in the concentrations of mercury and methylmercury in the bodies of fish. Still, other organic compounds produced by chemical plants have been found to be extremely harmful to fish and other forms of marine life. These effects include immunotoxicity, abnormal embryos, cardiotoxicity, and cancer. I'd like to make reference to another scientific research article published by the National Institute of Health, entitled Toxicities of Polycyclic Aromatic Hydrocarbons for Aquatic Animals. Chemicals similar to some of the pollutants already mentioned are produced by pharmaceutical companies, soap and detergent companies, food processing companies, and the paper and pulp manufacturers. The food processing companies produce what are known as highly putrescible organic matter, which are said to come with, or facilitate the growth of pathogenic microorganisms. Congress needs to mandate a set of regulations concerning where chemical waste from all of these industries should be disposed of. None of these wastes should be allowed to get out into the environment or in the usual routes where they can be deposited in any type of forest ecosystem, rivers or streams, or any other place that can be a route to bodies of water that lead to the ocean. There needs to be a new kind of infrastructure where waste is brought to and a complex set of sorting and breakdown of the various pollutants can be orchestrated. In some cases, useful products can be made from some of these wastes. The plan for dealing with each of these chemical